everyone, welcome back to another edition of Movies That Move We. Look who's back. Hi. All right, so today we are discussing The Deliverance. This is the film that's based on real events, and we're going to get into all of that. We're going to get into the real story and what happened afterwards. But let's start at the beginning and tell you who did it. This was directed by Lee Daniels. You'll remember him from Precious and the Butler. He co-wrote this with Elijah Bynum and David Cogshell. This movie came out in August. It had a limited release in theaters, and then it was put on Netflix. You can still watch it now. If you haven't, don't be scared. Just go watch it. It's actually, I think, an interesting story from a religious perspective. We'll talk about that a little later. But this was inspired by the story of LaToya Ammons. She rented a house in Gary, Indiana, and shortly after she rented the house, strange things started happening. She moved in 2011 with her mom and her 3 kids, and after moving in, there was a lot of unexplainable things. Like the very first thing, and you see this in the movie as well, they had an infestation of flies in the dead of winter. Now, normally if you got flies, something done died and the flies are having a feast, but in the winter time, it's hard to pull that one off. And this was happening on their front porch. The kids were behaving strangely. They were talking in strange voices. They said the kids were levitating, speaking a different language that the mother couldn't understand. The neighbors thought the kids were being abused and contacted the authorities. At a certain point, the authorities did remove the kids from the home. Her kids were taken from her without court order. The social worker was involved with all of that. And in 2012, a local priest performed an exorcism on the kids and I believe LaToya. We just finished watching the documentary about it also, and details between all of this are tiny bit sketchy. They moved out of that house in 2012. They moved, 100 miles away?
Indianapolis.
In Indianapolis. They were like, we're out. We want nothing to do with it. Anybody who's been in that house, they are like, we're not dealing with you because you probably have that spirit on you and we're not doing it again. They were absolutely terrified by what happened. I'm going to tell you about that as well when we start talking about the documentary. So this story is a little bit different. It doesn't happen in Gary, Indiana. It takes place in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And same setup. 3 kids, the daughter and her mother, which the mother is played by Glenn Close. And let me tell you something. Glenn Close played the mess out of a white woman who's down with the swirl. I would love to know what research she did to get the whole thing together, because when I tell you she played the mess out of it, she played the mess out of it, okay?
I also want to know, like, what made them cast her.
When you're good, you're good. Plain and simple. When you're good,
like,
you're good.
Because it's not even that she, like, I think she did a great job. It was just like, as I'm watching it, I'm like, how did this happen?
Like, what she
like, what made them make the decision to go with, like, a white character?
I'm wondering if they wrote it in that way just to
Because, and
some variety.
honestly, you know, especially if the family kind of said, look, we want a huge separation from our likeness. Like, I don't know, but again, it worked. But it was just kind of like,
yeah.
When it came out, I was like, but why?
but you know what? I didn't even think about that. I was like, dang. Because the dynamic between her and Andre, who played Ebony, the daughter,
Mm-hmm.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was really
It was
good.
awesome. It was believable.
But Glenn Close is like it. Like, she is a great actress. Y'all ever watch Fatal Attraction?
You know, I need you to calm down for a minute.
She did that. That's all I'm saying. Like, she did that.
Okay. but in saying that, you know, when people start talking about, okay, who are the great ones, her name is most definitely on the list. And the thing I love about seeing her with people who are considered newer in the industry, like Andre, she doesn't take away from their shine.
Yeah, Mm-mm.
You know, and it's nice to see that they could kind of, I'm not even going to say balance each other, but just that they had that dynamic and energy. And I've seen her do that in one other movie with a kid. And it's like, people are like, yo, for that kid to stand beside her and, you know, hold her own, that's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, it is, but I also think it's because on screen, she's not a selfish actress. I'll say it that way. And we'll be watching the movie I'm talking about next week. Later for that. But yeah, Glenn Close played the mother, Alberta. Andre played Ebony. Nate, which you'll remember him from Stranger Things, was played by Caleb McLaughlin. Andre, who is the other main character in this story, was the youngest son. He was played by Anthony B. Jenkins. Shantae, Demi Singleton, she plays the only daughter. And then there was Cynthia, played by none other than Monique. And then Apostle Bernice James was played by Anjanae Ellis-Taylor. Okay, so you got a great cast here. And again, when you start talking about kids who play their role well, Anthony did the darn thing.
Yeah.
Gotta give him his props on this, because he played the role of a possessed child really well.
And honestly, just a child in general, because I even see, like, in other movies that I watched, I've just always seen, like, sometimes when the kids act, it doesn't come off as, like, believable or
You're
like genuine. Like, it doesn't just mesh into the movie. It's kind of like, okay, yeah, they're a child actor and this is like probably their first or second movie, and like, you know, it's cute, but like, it's just like, we can tell you're acting.
But that's I mean, for anybody, it's challenging to go back and forth between being the character, the innocent child, shifting
to like an
evil character, and then just shifting back to innocent. And he was real smooth.
He was really good
with it. If the movie followed the big details of what happened with LaToya Ammons. Move into a house, social workers checking in the story. Not LaToya, Ebony is separated from her husband. He's trying to take the kids. She's had alcohol and drug problems. She's taking care of her mother, who has cancer, and there's tension between her and her mother. Her mother recently found Christ, is going to church, you know, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus is her thing. But even her mom has that similar thing where she was on drugs, she was on alcohol, she was abusive to her daughter. But she's changed. Her daughter is taking care of her because it's a responsibility, but she said to her mother several times, I haven't forgotten anything that you did to me. So I bring all of that up to talk about things that will wake up, in this case, a demon. And for those of you who are religious, you get where I'm going. And for those of you who are spiritual, yeah, you get it too, because we talk about good energy, being positive. What you give is what you get. And while this family wasn't, they weren't a bad family, they weren't bad people. They were stressed. There was a lot of stress and tension, and that type of energy will feed. And it was just like
there was a lot of past trauma and just negative things that have not been worked out.
Right.
And when you're talking about spirituality, like when there's a negative energy, there's going to be negative things that feed off of that, which a demon would be the perfect, like, oh, okay.
Right.
Yeah, they have this energy going on. I'm going to attach myself to it. So
there's
that makes
something
sense
for me to feed on. Now, the landlord in real life claimed never had anything like this happen before. I don't know what they're talking about. I don't know what they could be talking about. He's lying. And so we'll switch up now to the real story. I'm not going to tell you how it ends in the movie because it ends differently than it did in real life. A little bit. But I'll say this. Ebony, like LaToya, did get her kids back. They moved out of the home and set up somewhere far away to not deal with those things anymore.
Not far enough, in my opinion.
Oh, what, you want them to move to another planet?
It would have been across the country if it was me.
All right. So one of the things that we did, because y'all know me, I take notes, and there was a documentary that was also done about this, and we watched maybe half of it.
Yeah, I couldn't take it anymore.
Yeah. So the guy who did the documentary, his name is Zach Bagans, and if any of you watch the Travel Channel, like I do, and I do watch the paranormal stuff, I think it's kind of cool, I refuse to watch him. Absolutely not, under no circumstances, because he doesn't just deal with ghosts. Ghosts are easy. You walk in, you talk to them, they say get out, you leave. Straightforward. But he likes to go in and confront demons. So he will go into a space that people have said, listen, I was tossed around like a rag doll. Something was speaking to me and I didn't get it. I woke up and I had slashes all over me. He will go into that space and go, oh, you want to mess with people, huh? Come do it to me. And then he'll walk out with a demon attached to him, get exercise, and then go back and do the same thing again. That's the definition of crazy to me. I don't go out of my way to watch him. Because he did the documentary on this film, and he went to great lengths to get this story so that he could do the documentary. We're going to talk about him and things that happened after LaToya and her family left Dodge. Okay, so what he did, he bought the house. He bought the house. At the time he bought the house, there were squatters living there. They claimed initially, paranormal, what you mean? Ain't nothing happened here, no sir. But you want us to leave and you gonna pay us to get out? Let us pack these bags up now. He ended up speaking with the boyfriend away from the rest of the family. Okay, the boyfriend meaning co-squatter. And this guy started spilling his guts and saying, there's something in that house. If you pay me all the money first, we come to an agreement, I will tell you everything you need to know. Which to some might sound a little suspect, but being that there were 2 other families that lived in that house that had similar experiences, I kind of don't blame the dude for saying money, then conversation. The family that lived there previously, that actually rented previously, they came back to the house. They walked through. The woman brought her 3 kids, and it's on video. She never liked to go in the basement where the root of the activity was. She went down in the basement with the crew, with her kids, and Zach asked her, he was like, you said you didn't come down to the basement. You don't like it. She said, no. Was it her brother or her
Yeah,
uncle?
her brother.
Her brother lived in the basement when she lived there with her mom and her kids. And she said, he died while we were living here. Find out that he was killed. I don't think it was anything where he was illegally involved in anything. He was coincidentally shot. She said there were some strange things. You know, you would hear footsteps through the house when it made no sense for footsteps to be in the house. While they were in the house and she's talking to Zach, nobody else is talking. Everyone's listening. He asked her a question. She responded. And on the recording, you could hear another voice. Okay. They went back. They actually had to hunt down LaToya and her family. LaToya would say, oh, yeah, I'll talk to you. Never called him back. Never made time to speak with him. He found her house. She would not come to the door. Her brother said, I'll talk to you. Went back to Gary, went to the house with him, started explaining the things that he witnessed in the house. And when he got done talking to Zach and tried to get back into the place where he lived with his sister and mom, his sister said, absolutely not. Depart from me, Satan. Get thee behind. Don't come back here because you might have something on you. Okay? Zach said he had to fire members of his crew after one incident, and the actual incident is recorded on surveillance. Zach started shoving members of his team around while they were inside the house. They had just put up a little altar. Okay, so you think you put up an altar, you pray over it, you got your candles, your incense, whatever it is, that should keep things calm. Nope, that spirit jumped on him. He started getting violent, and they had trouble convincing him to come out of the house. Right after that incident, one of the crew members quit. He said, I'm done, not doing this with you. The police officer who was investigating the case when LaToya was there, he came back to the house to interview. And what was it, 2 weeks later, he said? Mm-hmm. 2 weeks later, this man slipped on ice. He said both feet came up from him. He went up about 3 feet in the air, landed on his head. A couple of weeks after that, he was shot. So it's like everybody that came to the house, something bad crazy happened. The previous family that rented before LaToya, I mentioned to you that the lady brought her 3 kids. While they were in the house again talking with Zach, her son walked by her and stood on the other side of one of the daughters. There's nobody behind her. Her knee buckled and she looks at her son and said, why'd you kick me? Nobody kicked her. And they slowed it down and showed you what was happening at the moment. Nobody kicked her. And whatever she felt, it didn't just feel like, oh, I'm losing my balance. She felt the hit. Well, what happened in the weeks after that is one of her daughters was just acting strange. Even while they were in the house, the daughter was like kind of going in and out. You could see her face would go blank, and then she would answer a question, and then her face would go blank again. The mother called Zach frantic and said, I just got a call from my mom. My daughter was at homecoming. I don't know what happened, and we're at the hospital. The girl tried to unalive herself. She was sitting and stabbing herself in both wrists with a pen. And it's what they call, was it stigmata? I think that's what it's called, stigmata, which is basically where people people will harm themselves, like in the fashion of the crucifixion. So you'll have marks in your wrist, you'll have marks in your feet as though you were spread out on the cross like Christ. They got her after she was all patched up, and they asked her what happened, and she said, I don't remember what happened. And in that moment, talking to her, she seemed like she was fine. So they went to the same priest that exorcised LaToya Ammons and her family. And he performed an exorcism on the girl. And they had the camera watching her. And she's sitting there, and the pastor is reading off scripture and telling her, this is not you. The demon has to come out in the name of Jesus. And she's sitting there, and her hands are going like this. And then all of a sudden, she just kind of, no one's touching her, no one's around her. And the pastor says that was the moment that the demon left. If you believe that stuff, you do. If you don't, you don't. If you're the type that believes in rebuking and calling things out in the name of Jesus and telling it to leave, this was that moment. Okay? Like I said, we didn't finish watching it, but Zach ran down a list of everything that happened to people who had any kind of contact with this house. People got sick. People were unalived. Just anything that you can think of, running the gamut. Okay, he said he was sick for 8 days at one point dealing with this house. Once he completed the documentary, he bulldozed the house. That's how bad things were. Bulldozed the house so nobody else could live there. I don't know if he still owns that plot of land or what, but he said that neighbors still report that there are some strange things happening around that property. And at the time that he was trying to do the documentary, he found out that part of the reason why LaToya didn't want to talk to him was because she was in talks with a producer about doing a film based on her story. Don't know who that was. He didn't name it. I'm not making assumptions that this is the same movie. So, in a nutshell, these are the things that happened based on real events. People, after the fact, getting involved, had some similar experiences with the spirit demon that lived in that house. So that being said, Zenny, talk to me about some of your thoughts overall about the movie.
Bulldozing should have happened years ago. That's what I'm going to start off with. But no, I just feel like it does remind me of some other movies. One that really stuck out to me was, it kind of reminded me of Us, because there's a scene, which I'm not going to give it away, but there is a scene where the main character is kind of having to face herself at a certain point. And if anybody has watched Us, there's a point where, in the beginning of the movie and at the end of the movie, where she's having to deal with herself. So even though I think it's coming from like a different context, like our context where, you know, in this film they're dealing with demons versus kind of like a parallel universe, it's still kind of like giving the vibe of like you're having to face yourself to overcome something.
Right.
Another thing that I noticed in the movie was there's a lot of symbolism. There's a part where basically like she's in the process of getting this demon out, and she's going into the basement with her flashlight because it's dark. Now, of course, this is where this demonic being is living. You know, that's associated with darkness. But, you know, of course, she's trying to go in with the Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ himself and get this thing out. She has the flashlight, and the flashlight shines on an angel figurine. In that moment, it kind of just like signaled like God is with you no matter what.
Right. Now, in the real events, remember they talked about the first time the police went to the house that they had crosses by the front door and all types of things to kind of protect the house. Yeah. So, yeah, there were things like that. There were a couple of jump scares. When you start talking about movie tropes, there were a couple of jump scares. There was the final girl trope because Andra Day was the one who was left standing to deal with that demon. So she was it. If she didn't survive it, that was it. She was the final girl. The typical dark and stormy night. There were certain scenes where things were happening or about to happen, and that dark and stormy night was the foreshadowing. Something that we saw last week in Parallel. The bird flying into the window. The crow flying into the window. That happened early in the movie, and that symbolizes change, whether good or bad. When you see the crow flying into or a bird flying into a window, that's the symbol right there. Don't push your foot. What was the other one?
They did bring up the bird again when they had to take the little boy to a therapist to figure out what was going on. And they showed him a picture of the crow.
Spoil it.
I'm not going to spoil it, but they showed the picture of the crow, and she kind of asked like what he thought it meant, and he related it to events in the house.
Right.
So it's like stuff like that. There's just like a lot of symbolism and stuff like that going on.
The subtle one was the train horn in one scene. And I didn't jot it down in my notes, but I did look it up. And basically, that also is a foreshadowing that danger is coming. And yes, shortly after that scene,
that makes sense.
That's what happened. But overall, I think the movie was a good interpretation of the real events. I think this is a lot milder than a lot of horror stories out there. You know, there were a couple of bloody scenes, but it wasn't anything. It wasn't gore. Put it like that. At least to me, it wasn't gore. The things that were going on based on the story made sense. It
wasn't even as much of a like thriller for me, where like stuff is just popping out every 5 minutes. It wasn't really like that either.
Right. You know, it was really, okay, something here is strange. We don't know what it is. But we black, so we ain't investigating it either. Like, there was one part where Ebony was like, okay, I gotta go downstairs and see what's going on. And she's standing there, but she was like, yeah, no, I know something's weird down there, but nah, I don't think I'm gonna go down there. This one is hollering, go downstairs. And I'm like, girl, she black.
Well, okay.
She's not gonna do
There was a
that.
scene where during the day, like, she felt something was off in the basement. She's outside in the backyard, and she's like, there's, what do they call that? The doors for the out.
I forget what they call the doors, but it's like slanted and it opens this way, and then you can walk down.
You can walk down to the basement from outside. So I'm sitting here like, all her kids are home. It's daylight. I'm going to go down there and find out what's going on because I have an infestation in my house. Where is this coming from? That's my thought process. Now, at night, absolutely not. I'm not going in no basement late night.
Let me tell you what sis did. She called a professional to go down there and figure out what was going on, which is what I would have done. Because remember, we lived in that old house. Neither one of us was a fan of the basement.
Nope.
Okay? Old house, stone wall, like cobblestone wall. No. And that's where the laundry room was. I started taking my stuff to the laundromat because
scary.
Wasn't feeling it. So I think overall, good interpretation of real events without being so exact about every detail. The one character who you saw her turn around was Monique's character, the social worker. Oh gosh, what was the character's name again? Cynthia. Cynthia was a jerk. Okay, put it plain and simple. She walked in. She was like, "You drinking? You still smoking? Yeah, you still drinking and smoking." Was going through the mother's medication, dropping it on the floor, and I wanted to punch her in the throat. I'm not gonna lie. Because she was annoying.
She was disrespectful.
But by the end, once she witnessed what was actually happening, she had some sympathy. Just a little bit. But she had some sympathy and was like, all right, I know this wasn't you being drunk or high while these things were happening because I saw it and I know I wasn't drunk or high. So I'm going to help you get your kids back. So, and I think Monique did. Look, you can't complain. You can't complain about Monique's acting. Charles.
Yeah, she's a great actress.
So all in all, I think if you like the horror genre, this is up your alley. Check it out. If you're gonna go so far as to watch the documentary about this, do it during the daytime.
Have sage and holy water.
And anointing oil.
Because I will be saging myself later.
And we didn't even watch the whole thing, but we were sitting here like...
And it's crazy because it draws you in. Like, it is interesting to, like, find out all these things that were going on, but...
Yeah.
It just scares me because it's like, if all this was happening to these people by just, like...
because you see it really
happening.
And, again, knowing the history of, what was his name? Zach Bagans. Knowing the history, again, used to watch him all the time and be unfazed. And then I grew up and realized, oh snap, he's really, that really did jump on him. Knowing that he goes all in and seeing the things that happened just in that first half. Yeah, you may, if you're going to watch the documentary, heck, watch it outside. Don't even watch it in the house. Watch it outside. But, yeah, I think this one is a good one if you're into horror. If you're into, what is it? I don't want to say reality, but like based on true events.
Yeah, like documentaries,
biopics,
stuff like that, yeah.
I think you'll enjoy this one. So, you got anything else you want to add? Omar Epps. Omar Epps was Alberta's nurse.
Oh yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna say that was the comic relief. But that was the it can't be serious. No,
there was comic relief.
I mean, there was some funny parts, but that whole relationship had me like, this can't be real. this can't be real.
But it was like, it
And
worked.
then-
I don't
and
know.
then
It just worked anyway.
Again, you know, you got to give Omar Epps been in it for a while. He played the role of nurse well. And then Glenn Close, what you'd have
gotta
to see
watch
it to get it. But I was like, oh my darn. Did they? Wow, they really just did. Wow. Okay. I ain't mad at either one of them.
Exactly. I wasn't expecting that either.
I wasn't, and mind you, I sat here and watched it twice. So,
I was not expecting
so, all right. Anything else from you, ma'am?
No, I think it was a really, really good movie. I would watch it again.
Let me tell you how much she was in her phone because she was afraid of the bloody bits.
There was one part where they having a flashback, and I don't do the chopping and the slicing. I don't do that. Now, I watch a lot of like creepy stuff, but when it comes to like the blood and guts, I cover my eyes. Even if it's in the movie I'm watching, I'm like, no, I can't
American
watch it.
Horror Story.
Yeah,
I
will cover my eyes on some parts of American Horror Story as well.
And
if it's gory,
the stuff there is way weirder than what was in this movie. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
And honestly, also, I'll say American Horror Story kind of has like, especially the older ones, their gory things. It's like you look at it and you're like, oh, that's not really that believable. Like, it's not that realistic. This was pretty realistic. I'm sorry.
Well, knowing that these events really happened, it's like you watch it with a different mindset.
Yeah.
So that is all we have for you today. Next week, we will be talking about The Girl with All the Gifts. You know, continuing on our Scary October type theme or sci-fi thriller horror themed month. Yeah, The Girl with All the Gifts. Check that one out. I downloaded it, but I'm sure you can find it streaming somewhere. If you can't, definitely rent it on Voodoo Fandango. Great movie. Glenn Close once again is in that one, and again, that movie is the one where the interaction between her and the girl, stellar performance between the both of them. If you like zombie movies, this is it. Okay, so we'll bring that up next week. We'll talk a little more about that. In the meantime, don't forget to like, share, and follow our YouTube channel and Facebook page, both called Movies That Move We. Okay, tell your mama, tell your friends, and until then, we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.